All right, we're back. Can you see me? Can you hear
I
me?
can. Let me make sure that OBS is still going. Yes. Okay.
Let me just take a quick drink.
I don't. All right. So my internet sucks sometimes.
It's all right. It's all right. So I think we were done with third level spells. Were you able to catch about enemies abound,
Yes.
creating distractions? Okay. So I think we can move on to fourth level spells, unless there were like particular third level spells you were curious about.
Not really. I mentioned tongues earlier. I think that's a decent option, but again, it's not one I'm super excited about. So I don't. I don't.
Tongues. Go ahead.
I don't think it's one that I'd be picking over some other options. But depending on your party situation, sometimes you have people who can speak a lot of different languages. But if you only speak like 0 or 1, then it can be handy.
What I was thinking about is that you're gonna get comprehend languages anyway.
Yeah.
So as a ritual. So I mean, like maybe not you and the sorcerer, but perhaps another party member can cast comprehend languages as a ritual, and that covers that. But of course, for sure, if nobody else in the party can cast comprehend languages, you could pick it as a first level psionic sorcery spell, so you can have it cheap at one sorcery point, or you could pick tongues at third level. Up to you.
Either way.
These are just options.
Yeah. Either way, let's move on to fourth.
Yeah, so fourth level spells. So we get into another combat spell, which is Everett's Black Tentacles. I think this is quite underrated. Specifically for your build, I think this would be better than Hunger of Hadar.
I actually agree.
A Hunger of Hadar is going to block line of sight for your allies. This won't. Right? So it's not going to be annoying to other party members. You still deal damage. All right, and I think it adds better control than Hunger of Hadar. Hunger of Hadar, you get blindness and difficult terrain. For Black Tentacles, you get difficult terrain, and then when you get pushed there, when they enter the area for the first time on a turn, or when they start their turn, okay, they basically proc a dexterity save for against restraint. So they could either be restrained or not. If they're not restrained, they still make the save because they have a high dex save. You still have difficult terrain. Then you can just keep pushing them back and proccing that dexterity save using Repelling Blast. I think this would be a better option for you, for your Aberrant Mind. And what's great about this is that once you get them restrained once, okay, the creature, whoever's restrained, can use their action to make a strength or dexterity check, not a save, against your DC. Which is going to be harder because they don't get magic resistance or advantage. They can't use legendary saves.
Yep.
It's going to be there. Combine this with a quickened or natural cast Tasha's Mind Whip.
I knew you were going to say that because I was thinking the same thing. Yeah. And now they had to use their action to escape, but they can't even move. And then they're going to start the next.
It's a trap.
Yeah, and then they're going to start the next turn there, where they have to make another save because that's at the beginning of their turn or when they first enter. So, you use your action to escape, you have no movement. Well, now you got to use your action to try to escape again, maybe, and still have no movement. And you just. The other thing is too that even like leaving the Tasha's Mind Whip thing aside for now, right? Let's say you hit like 3 targets with Hunger for Dark because it's a bigger effect, right? Like you said, they can dash, they can move out. Maybe I can push one of them back in with Repelling Blast. But it's very unlikely that I'm going to be able to push all 3 of them back in. Yes, you might have more than one Eldritch Blast, but just, logically, the way you're going to have to position yourself, it's going to be hard to get the right angle to get them all. You also, you do really want to split your Eldritch Blast like 2 to 3 different ways, because if you miss, you might need to just push one guy like 20 feet or 30 feet, so you want to put it all into him, right?
Exactly.
Whereas with Black Tentacles, let's say you only hit 2 because it's a smaller area. The thing is, they could both get grappled. And now neither one of them, you're not having to worry about pushing them back in because they're just stuck there. And like I said, now you can start doing things like, I don't even have to quick and cast Tasha's Mind Whip. I can just cast it on both of them because I don't have anybody to push anyway. Nobody got out, right? And then you can start focusing on other things. You don't have to just keep trying to push guys back in because sometimes they just aren't even getting out in the first place. So I like that. I like that a lot.
It's automatic, like 3d6 bludgeoning damage, magical bludgeoning damage every round,
I think it's
right?
3d8,
And
but
what's
whatever.
yeah, so around that amount.
Yeah.
And what's great about it is, as I mentioned earlier, it doesn't block line of sight for your party members, so they can all
Mm-hmm.
contribute whatever they want to do. Either that's damage or layering another control spell on top of that. It's easier, right?
Shooting arrows
And
at
of
them.
course, yeah, exactly. And what's good about it is that the opponents are restrained, which means they have disadvantage on their attack rolls. So even if they have ranged attacks, they're gonna have disadvantage to hit you guys.
Yes.
So it's still a win-win for you. I think it's gonna be better once you move to fourth level to use this, but it doesn't mean that you stop using Hunger for Fadar if you don't want to. If that's like your
Yeah.
signature spell, that's what you're known for, then you keep using it. Both are still effective. What this does, though, is it opens up options for you. Perhaps, let's say, when you have a wider map, you use Hunger for Fadar, right? Or if you're facing casters, because they would need line of sight.
Yes.
But if, let's say, it's a smaller map with, like, let's say, lots of obstacles, or like a hallway, then you could just use Black Tentacles. It gives you options now. This is what I meant earlier about having, let's say, a couple of concentration spells, which would give you, like, what's an option compared to the other, but that's not overdoing it. So
Yeah,
I
I
think
agree.
this is a good alternative for Hadar. Of course, another concentration spell, in case you don't want to do the whole persistent control damage thing, is Summon Aberration, which we already discussed earlier. Um, I'll probably just discuss a couple of tidbits on this one I want to highlight. We already discussed Extend Spell. Okay, we already discussed the extra amount of attacks. Another thing I wanted to point out here for the Summon Aberration spell is that you don't have to just be the one to ride it if you're picking the Beholder. So D&D allows you to have two creatures of smaller size to ride a creature of one size larger. So like two small creatures can ride a medium, two medium can ride a large, and so on and so forth. Right? So this actually provides a defensive benefit, let's say, for another party member who might be more fragile than you are, perhaps the party healer or the bard. So you can have them also climb the Beholder and then keep them from safety. It's only your frontliners are on the ground. So I think that's another great idea. You can share these benefits to party members, unlike the other spells, which are primarily for you.
Yeah.
Right? This one, let's say, you could have, come on, ride with me. Let's both ride the Beholder. I think that's a good idea for a defensive benefit for an ally.
Excellent.
What do you think?
I think that's a great idea. We've already talked about Summon Aberration a lot. I think we both really like the spell. I'm planning on still keeping it, even though I'm planning on playing more of a control build, but just because I like having a nice summoning spell. And I think like summoning spells, I think they kind of got a bad rap from the Player's Handbook days because a lot of the spells just weren't very good. You had to go through all the books, and sometimes the DM would get to pick what you summon actually instead of you. Whereas like the ones from Tasha's are just so much superior, and they act on your initiative. Which like in my case, I took the alert feat, and I've got 16 decks, so I've got a pretty good initiative bonus. So them acting on my initiative means they're probably going to be really fast in a lot of combats too. It's not like they're acting on a 4 or something. you know what I mean? So like, you use the Beholder as an example. It's got ranged attacks. So if I roll like a 16 and then I got like a +8 bonus or something, I'm going to be up north of 20, and they're just going to be up there with me, firing off filling off their spell rate things, and I just think it's a really, really great use of your concentration. So, like I said, it's one that I plan on using even, aside from this. The other thing I like about it is that sometimes you're fighting stuff that, like, maybe you're fighting devils, right, for example, and you're like, oh, well, Hunger Vidar is not really going to do much because they have Devil Sight innately, and the difficult terrain is not going to matter on some of them because a lot of them can, they've got short-range teleports and stuff in a lot of cases, or they've got a fly speed or whatever else, right?
Yeah.
So they can just ignore the difficult terrain, right?
The ground-based control.
Exactly. Same with Evoid's Black Tentacles, because if they're flying and they've got a hover speed, none of that's going to matter, right? But if you've got this Summon Aberration, it gives you this good option where, okay, well, I'm not going to be able to cast a spell on these guys, so I'm going to summon a creature, and he's going to be able to shoot him and blast him, or he's going to be able to grapple him with the slat, or he's going to do psychic damage with his attacks like the Star Spawn. And it just gives you this really good fallback plan. Maybe I was planning on using sickening radiance, but then we're fighting like some sort of like angel type creatures, and you're like, oh well, they're probably immune to radiant, so what's that going to do? Maybe they're immune to exhaustion. Again, like all these spells have nice side benefits, but they also have certain limitations. Like maybe they're immune to grappling and restraint, in which case Black Tentacles isn't going to do much either, right? So it's like, okay, well, if I'm fighting these other types of things, because my primary strategy isn't going to work, I do need another strategy that's not just always going to be Scorching Ray or Eldritch Blast all the time. Like, I kind of want something I can still concentrate on, and in which case Summon Aberration just becomes such a great choice in my opinion. So
I agree. I think as well, two things. So, number one, using the summon over as your concentration over your, let's say, control spells, it saves you one action. So why? Because this can be running pre-combat.
yes,
You could either extend spell, or even if you don't cast extend spell, 1 hour. If you know that combat's coming up soon, like you're in a dungeon or you're raiding an enemy castle or whatever, you can pre-cast it. So your first turn in combat, it doesn't have to spend it casting your area concentration spell. And let's say once you get spells like Synaptic Static, you may want to use that as your opener.
exactly.
So you're not really going to open with Hunger of Adar or a Black Tentacles. So you already have Synaptic Static. It's providing a little bit of control.
Yep.
Maybe supplemented a little bit of Tasha's Mind Whip, a little bit of Dissonant Whispers as well. So pretty much you get your control from the non-concentration, while your damage is coming primarily from your concentration spell.
Exactly.
That's an option. And of course, you may have GMs who might want to run, let's say, very dynamic terrain. Perhaps you're in an airship battle, right? The Hunger of Adar or the Black Tentacles are not really going to work there, but you riding a Beholder in an airship battle not only looks cool, but it works,
Yeah.
right? So that's one advantage. Second thing about using, let's say, Summon Aberration compared to, let's say, the other control spells, is that somebody else in the party might already be taking that role. And control is always good, but there comes a point wherein you don't need them as much.
Yes.
Maybe you're partying with a bunch of casters. So if they're already doing that, and that's what they like to do, you can easily adjust, and I'm going to go with a cheap summon spell, because I can only cast it for 4 sword points. Right? Or, I could upcast it to 5th if I wanted to. Sure. A little bit of extra AC and HP. Right. By the way, little nitpick. Actually, the darkness in Hunger of Adar is not pierceable by Devil's Sight.
Really?
It's more of like blackness. It's not really magical darkness.
Okay.
At least from what I've read. So, basically, devils that can't really see through it. But again, your party members also can't see through it, so that might annoy them. So if I was, let's say, doing your build, at least for this level, before we get to level 5 spells, let's say until level 8-ish, assuming you have like 1 level of Warlock or 2 levels of Warlock, or level 8 to 9, I'd probably stick with Black Tentacles and Aberration, or I'd choose the next spell I'm about to mention. So the next spell I'm about to mention is Rolathim's Psychic Lens. This, however, is a pretty new spell. It's from Fizzbands. I don't know if your GMs would allow it in your campaigns. It's quite recent. Well, not really. It's been around for a couple of years already, but
yeah.
Most people, they don't really know about it. I don't see it recommended a lot in builds. So
which
what's
is probably
great about
it's
it?
a great
Number one,
spell.
it's not concentration. Yeah, it's a great spell. This is essentially Tasha's Mind Whip upgraded. So, not only are you getting 7d6 worth of damage, but instead of them choosing one action that they can do, either action, bonus action, or movement, they just get incapacitated. And it's also an intelligence saving throw, so it's going to power through everything that is not a legendary save. Though expect if your DM is packing a monster that has legendary saves, they're going to use it on this one. It's going to knock out an enemy for a turn. And usually, if an enemy is out for a turn, it's dead. Because the party can just pile on and cast their best spells or use their action surges or smites. So, and again, it's non-concentration, which makes it good to combine with Summon Aberration. Because you can actually still get some control in while using a spell that's, as a concentration, it's not able to contribute control wise. So I think this is one of the good uses for it. And of course, for me, as I think I told you in our previous conversation, I like the thematic aspect of this. It's wherein you, if you can name the creature, if you can get their name somehow, let's say, I don't know, Arcana check, History check, Religion check, depends on how lenient your DM is, or perhaps you got it through roleplay. You could actually have this target that creature wherever they are. All right, even if you can't see them, as long as they're within range, 120 feet. So that's pretty far. But they could be invisible. They could be hiding behind darkness or whatnot. And as long as you can say their name, you can find them and hit them with Psychic Glance, which is a nice, niche utility effect. But it's pretty cool because it reminds you of the anime Death Note, where like you can write somebody's name in a notebook and then you can sort of kill them. This one is like similar effect. You say their name and you just get damaged. So yeah, I think it's just a really cool spell. Have you tried using this spell at your table?
Nobody at my table has ever cast it. It's one that, and I've usually been the DM, right? So I'm planning on taking it. Probably, I'm not planning on changing out my fourth level spell slots, but I'm going to pick it up as a fourth level spell choice, probably.
Mm-hmm.
And
so,
yeah, I plan on using it because I think it's a great spell, and like I said, none of my players have ever used it, right? So,
okay, so here's a tip for that. When you're thinking of Psionic Sorcery, you only have limited to 2 spells per level, right? That could be affected by Psionic Sorcery. What I'd recommend is that these non-concentration spells, which you could be casting multiple times in a combat, these are the ones that you want taking up a Psionic Sorcery selection. Because you'll be casting them multiple times.
That's a good point.
Unlike the concentration spells, which may be, you may cast them, you may not cast them, it might be an alternative, then, you could just have them as a normal sorcerer spell selection. And then the one that you're casting more often is the one that's a psionic sorcery selection.
That's an interesting point. The only problem is that, like, Summon Aberration and Evar's Black Tentacles aren't natively on the sorcerer spell list, right? So because I was thinking about that too. I was like, if I took Psychic Glance, I could use it a lot more, but then I'd have to replace one of those with Psychic Glance, and I wouldn't have those anymore because I couldn't take them as a sorcerer selection usually. Whereas I could take Psychic Glance, right? But
fair point.
But I do agree with you that in a different build, like let's say you didn't want to play a summoner, or let's say you didn't want to play a control guy, then and maybe you just wanted to have your summon beholder ride around her net and hit people with Psychic Glance, then swapping out like Black Tentacles for this would be a great decision because you'll be able to get a lot more uses out of it. So
I think as well, you could just switch it around once you get to higher levels.
That's true.
Perhaps once you're at the level 8 or 9, then yeah, you could just select this as your sorcerer spell selection, and then switch it around once you get to your 5th level spells. So why am I saying this? Because the first 5th level spell I'm going to mention is Telekinesis, which is already on the list, which kind of duplicates Black Tentacles. They're both restraint effects, right? But personally, I think Telekinesis is better. Black Tentacles is good for area, but you kind of already have that with Hunger Vidar. So, if you're just after the restrained effect so you don't obstruct your party while still implementing control, in our previous conversations, you thought of Telekinesis primarily for out of combat. I think this is a great combat spell, and if I were to build an Aberrant Mind, this would be my build-around spell, especially if we could start at higher levels. If I'm starting at level 9, I'm taking this as my build-around spell. Why? Number 1, it's the most reliable of all of the control spells available to the Aberrant Mind because it targets skill checks. So you could just make somebody restrained. And you're thinking, but there's no damage. What could you do? You could lift a creature up into the air, 30 feet. Alright. Quicken Telekinesis. Choose to switch targets. Switching targets is a free action. The person falls 30 feet, they take 3d6 damage of falling damage, and they land prone. So, which is good for your party members. But you haven't used your action yet, if you quicken Telekinesis. You could use your action to lift them again, and keep them restrained in the air, or you could pick another target, do the same thing, switch targets again, drop them prone, 3d6 damage, now you have 2 creatures prone on the ground, which, and again, it's easier for them to get past any saves because it's a skill check. It's a contested charisma check, right?
Especially depending on your party, you could have, like, let's say you've got say a fighter, for example, using Great Weapon Mastery. He's got that -5 penalty. Making the target prone is just going to make it easier for him to lay on all his attacks. Maybe even Action Surge on top of that, and just stack that +10 damage over and over and over again, and is giving you a lot more like party-friendly things that you can do, right? Or like if you got a melee rogue, now he can have advantage. He's guaranteed to be able to sneak attack, right? So I like that.
Or
idea.
For any archers or spell attackers in your group, it's very hard for them to generate advantage, unlike melee characters. So this gives them a reliable way to gain advantage, because you can keep them restrained in the air instead of dropping them prone. Keep them restrained in the air, and then they have advantage to shoot at them.
Yeah. Instead of a Great Weapon Master, maybe you got a sharpshooter in your party, and you want to give him advantage instead. You're like, okay, here you go, restrained target.
Right, and why I love this spell is this pretty much is very efficient, because number one, it's an out-of-combat spell, as we discussed. There's so many things you could do with telekinesis out of combat. You can move objects, you could, let's say, break through, let's say, obstructions, like boulders, you can lift them, right? You could get the party, let's say, to a tower or to a battlement, right?
That's what I was going to say too.
Outside of combat.
Given you a limited spell selection, you might not be able to fit in something like fly, but telekinesis could allow you to lift one of your allies up to that ledge and go explore, and basically get that same functionality plus everything else that telekinesis is giving you beside that, right?
Right, and it gives you damage, right? At least 3d6 falling damage, right? And then it gives you control. You can at least, at minimum, can do 2 prones, right? Or 2 restraints, up to you. Which one do you want? And it saves you spell slots, because as a sorcerer, you can quicken cast it, and then you can use an action, which basically is not casting the spell. So there's no like those like annoying bonus action rules when casting 2 spells. None of them apply. So you can just pick 2 targets, and then on your subsequent turns, you can just basically quicken another spell, and then use your action on telekinesis. So you don't need to cast a cantrip. You get that effect. So you could basically supplement this, let's say, with, again, Psychic Lance, Dissonant Whispers, or Cautious Mind Whip as a quicken spell. And then you're using your action primarily on telekinesis. Then one last thing is... Go ahead.
I was going to say, even just if you wanted to do more of a blaster type of role, just restraining somebody, lifting them in the air, giving yourself advantage on all your Eldritch Blasts. Like, let's say you have to 11 now, right? Because you're getting this at level 9, and maybe you took 2 levels of Warlock, right? Like what I was planning. So you're actually level 11, right? Well, now you're making 3 blasts around, giving yourself advantage. Well, assume you got, like, Agonizing Blast. That's going to be a way bigger damage boost than 3 attacks without advantage, where you're concentrating on Hex. Like, telekinesis
you can drop them afterwards.
Yeah, telekinesis is just going to be way more effective. Yeah, like you said, you can do that, lift them up, fire off your 3 blasts, and then just drop them, and then they're taking even more damage. So,
right,
which is
thrown, and then your allies
and the 3d6 falling damage actually equals what Hex would have done if you'd hit 3 blasts. Right. So, that's assuming you even hit 3 times.
Here's the combo, though. So, telekinesis works as long as you keep them within range. If you somehow break the range, the restrained effect disappears. So, the range of telekinesis is 60 feet. Let's say, turn 1, you quicken telekinesis. Push them up 30 feet. You don't drop them. Use your action to move them another 30 feet, hitting basically the 60 feet limit on the range. So, there's 60 feet in the air. Turn 2, you decide to use Repelling Blast on the airborne opponent. So, if you use Repelling Blast, that's going to push them. Let's say you have 3 Eldritch Blasts by this time. So, 10 feet, 20 feet, 30 feet, they'll be 90 feet in the air. And because you push them past the telekinesis range, it becomes broken automatically, they're going to fall. So, they're going to fall from 90 feet in the air, adding an additional 96 damage. Falling damage on top of your Eldritch Blasts. And then, of course, once they fall down, again, they're prone. So if they're still alive, your party members can swarm over them. Or, let's say, instead of using Eldritch Blast as an action on your second turn, you could quicken Eldritch Blast, push them up in the air. When they fall, you use your action to telekinesis them back up 30 feet again to the air and restrain them. So in case you want to assist your sharpshooters or spell attackers in the party. There's just like, there's a lot of ways to kind of like play around with the damage,
Yeah.
depending on your party members or what you want to do.
Excellent. I like it.
So the only thing here is that it's good versus like two targets.
Yeah, one or two targets.
That's why I said you need an alternative in case your DM sends you like a mob. If it's a mob, then Hunger of Adar. So personally, once I get access to telekinesis, I'm skipping Black Tentacles. I'm keeping Hunger of Adar. I'm keeping my 4th level slot perhaps to Psychic Lance or whatever, let's say, role play pick you might want. That's also free in case you don't want Summon Aberration. Or maybe even take Black Tentacles still. That's still fine. But I think Black Tentacles is not as important once you get this spell. Because it's a small area too, let's be honest.
Yeah.
Black Tentacles is probably just going to hit a couple of creatures anyway, which is the same amount of creatures you're going to hit with telekinesis.
Well, that's why even when we were talking about Hunger of Hadar versus Black Tentacles, the example I gave was like you're hitting 3 things with Hunger of Hadar, but you're only hitting 2 with Black Tentacles. Because realistically, that's just a much more viable scenario, right? Like,
right.
It is a small area. And like I said, I like the fact that it restrains guys and it keeps them in there, but the other advantage is that telekinesis, you can use it on a flying creature because they're still restrained, and if they have a hover speed, they're not going to fall, and they're not going to fall anyway, actually, because you can just hold them up there.
Right.
But like both the other spells are essentially worthless against creatures that are flying, whereas telekinesis doesn't have that. And at lower levels, you're fighting a lot less flying creatures, but you're at least level 9 by the time we're talking telekinesis, maybe higher. And flying creatures are starting to become a lot more prevalent. So this is something that you can use on a lot more variety of creatures, right? I mean, that is kind of my complaint about Hold Person, is that it's a limited number of targets. This one has all targets basically being available. Yeah.
Right. Or if for some reason, let's say the creature you want to target is immune to restraint. So that's probably the only counter to telekinesis because it's a skill check. Legendary saves, magic resistance, you're not going to care about that. What you could do is, as it's telekinetic, right, is to find an object, maybe a boulder, or maybe have a creation bard in your party, let him create something that's heavy, and then lift the object, drop it.
Son of a gun. Oh,
I think...
we're back. I think we're good. My freaking internet just sucks at this place. I never had to worry about this in my old house, but whatever.
Yeah, so basically you can drop objects even if the creature is immune to restraint. That way you're still getting some damage in. You may not be able to get them to fall or to restrain them, but you can drop objects in them. And I don't know, I've met some GMs who are kind of like, they want to include like real life physics into D&D, and they would calculate like the falling objects damage based on the weight. So if you have a DM that's like that, that's going to be very fun for you because you can pick like heavy objects, right? Some DMs, they just use like falling damage for falling objects, so the damage may not be as high, but again, you have options. That's what's so great about telekinesis. It's a versatile spell for control, for damage, and also for utility, again, out of combat uses. Plus, if you have like Star Wars fanatics watching your channel, they could very much feel like Darth Vader force choking somebody in the air. So there's also the thematics aspect of it, or like maybe like the X-Men. You want to role play Phoenix or Professor X, again, telekinesis, very apropos in theme.
All right, and we have one more given to us for free, which you haven't talked about.
Right. Actually, there's 2 more spell selections. One, you already mentioned, which is Synaptic Static. It's another combat spell. What's great about this is, again, intelligence saving throw. So again, if you notice, I like intelligence saving throws because it's great for powering through everything except legendary resistance. And this allows you to supplement your Hunger of Hadar because if you use Hunger of Hadar, you can't see through it as well, right? So this one is like a fireball. So you don't need to see through it. You can just choose a point within range. You can just choose the point inside Hunger of Hadar and then launch this fireball. And again, it's not as high damage as the fireball, but most likely it's going to do more damage than a fireball because
Yeah,
they were going to fail their saves. And then
exactly.
at this level, enemies are going to make their reflex saves.
Yeah,
So even if it's like a upcasted fireball, 10d6, they're going to take half damage, 5d6. This one does 8d6, they're going to fail their saves, they're going to take the full 8d6. And it's a better damage type. It's
yes.
psychic damage.
Instead of fire, yes.
Bonus, if they fail their saves, they get a control effect that's non-concentration, which you can stack on your grease, on your mind whip, on your psychic lens, which allows them to subtract a d6 from attack rolls and ability checks. So again, it's just layering more and more effects
Yes.
without really consuming what you can do. And what makes this great for a sorcerer, you can do this over and over in every battle. You can just convert spell slots. It's one of the best spells in the game, and sorcerers can do it over and over.
I know. Oh, this is another thing that I hadn't really thought about until I started playing the Aberrant Mind specifically, which is that it does free you up from having to choose certain meta magics. You can still choose them if you want, but like subtle spell is still going to be great if you want to subtle cast counter spell. Nothing wrong with that. But
Sure.
it also means you don't need it quite as badly because you can get effects of subtle spell on some of your go-to spells, right? So maybe you still want it, but you don't feel like you need it. You know what I mean? And then same thing with transmuted spell. I really like transmuted spell, but if I'm taking things that do a lot of psychic damage and target things where they're not going to be making saving throws, it's a way more reliable damage type than say fireball or lightning bolt or anything like that. Again,
I don't need it.
Yeah, I don't need it as much, and this leaves me the options of taking some of the other really good ones that sometimes you just can't really fit them in because you've got 5 or 6 choices you want, and you've got 2 or 3 selections available to you.
Yeah, exactly.
And now, granted, you can take the Metamagic Adept feat. That's always a good choice as well. But now you might not even need that feat because you're like, you know what, like maybe I can get away without taking subtle spell, and I could get away without taking transmuted spell, and maybe I just want like quickened and like careful or extended or whatever. Right? Like, you can take some of these other choices, and you're not being pigeonholed into like, oh, but I kind of want subtle spell, I kind of want this, I kind of want that. It's like now they're kind of like, yeah, it would be nice to have those, but I don't need them as much as I would have on a different type of sorcerer, perhaps.
Right, and it allows you to pick stuff now that's for role play primarily.
Yes.
Perhaps let's say, okay, I want to feel more involved out of combat. So aside from the let's say the conversation, social challenge stuff, maybe for one of my extra feats, once I don't need those feats, I could just max charisma and I'm done. Maybe take alert, but maybe I'll take ritual caster, or I'll get something thematic like gift of the gem dragon or telekinetic, even though I don't need it because it's part of the theme of my character. Right? Perhaps let's say I'm supposed to be a psychic.
I was going to say, even some like inspirational leader, like I realize that temporary hit points are a lot better generated through other things these days, whereas inspirational leader used to be like really good back in the Player's Handbook day. But if I'm like summoning creatures and stuff like that, giving them temporary hit points while also buffing my party can be really good. And it's charisma anyways, like it's the kind of thing where, if I've got that Beholder kid and he's only got like 40 hit points, well, giving him like 15 temporary hit points actually adds a lot of survivability to that guy. And if I'm using extended spell on him, I'm going to get 2 hours of use out of that guy. And I'm buffing the rest of my party in addition. I'm not just using it just for my summoned aberration. I'm buffing the whole party, and I'm going to buff my ally as well that I summoned, right? Just get more use out of them even. And so I think that it starts to, really just, you take something that's already good, and now you're just pushing it up a little bit more,
Right. The Aberrant Mind Sorcerer, why it's good is that it kind of allows you to get to the good to have picks, but not the must have picks earlier. Mm-hmm. Because it eliminates subtle spell. It eliminates the need for meta magic adept. It eliminates being able to think of all of the other spells that you might want to pick as a sorcerer, because it gives you a bunch of free spells. So it gets you into the good to have range and eliminates the must have range much earlier in your build timeline.
That was one thing I talked about. I mean, this is a different topic, but I mentioned this on my one of my videos about the clerics, right? And I was talking specifically about the life cleric. And I was like, I see a lot of people criticizing the spell list for life cleric because it's like, oh yeah, but it's all these heals and stuff that you're going to take anyway. And I'm like, yeah, that's the point. Now I don't have to prepare those. Like if I'm playing let's say like a war cleric or a tempest cleric or anything else, I'm still going to have to probably pick up healing word. I'm still going to have to take revivify. I'm going to have to use a bunch of stuff on these other choices, which maybe I didn't really want to do because I wanted to be like Thor, and now I'm going to have to take revivify. Whereas the life cleric, it's like, yeah, I'm getting all those choices automatically, so I don't have to waste time on it. Now I can pick deeper into the spell list and get all the things that I kind of wanted, but I couldn't fit in because I needed revivify, because I needed all these healing spells. And it's like, no, I got those automatically. I don't have to worry about it. And I think that Aberrant Mind, you kind of get some of that same effect where it's like, you've got all these really good things, and now you can, pick some of the other things that were, like, instead of the S tier choices, to the A tier choices. And maybe it was hard because you needed to get the S tier. It's like, well, I got a couple of S tiers for free, and now I can get those A tier choices that I also wanted, but couldn't necessarily fit in sometimes.
And some of them don't even have to be A tier choices.
Yeah.
They could be like C tier each choices. Like we talked about Charm Person.
Yeah.
You probably can't fit Charm Person in normal sorcerer, but here it's free.
Yeah,
you just put it in, right? Or maybe Hex, right? You might not want to fit it in. Now you fit it in. And also, which brings me to the last spell I want to discuss, which is also a niche choice, which you could fit in if, let's say, you didn't want telekinesis. I think Synaptic Static is an auto pick, but in case you didn't want to use telekinesis, you wanted to do a different build, right? Let's say you wanted to ride the Beholder again, or maybe you have a grappling slad, right? Summon Aberration slad. So the next pick is Modify Memory. I don't know if you expected me to say that. Did you expect me to say that?
No, but I do like that choice.
Okay. So again, this is more of an out-of-combat roleplay pick, right? So again, if your DM likes doing lore dumps, right, this gives them the opportunity to be nice to your DM so you could get your way sometimes. This gives them a way to dump lore on you, or you could basically use the lore that they dump on you on a target, right? So basically what this allows you to do is, in case they fail their save, you can have them remember something in exact detail. You can modify that memory. You can make them, just change it, like totally different memory, which of course could affect how NPCs react, how the quest lines will change, etc. One thing though that's understated about modifying memory is it's obvious if you do it outside of combat because it's a spell, right? Visual, somatic, but if you have subtle spell, nobody's going to suspect that you're actually changing somebody's memory on the fly in the middle of a conversation. That you could be implanting certain things so that you can get the desired response that you would want, let's say from a noble, from a guardsman, whatever it is. And the bonus here is, most people think that yes, this is an out-of-combat spell, but it's actually also a combat spell. Why? Because if they fail their save, they are incapacitated. So it's very similar to Psychic Glance. So for this one, they are incapacitated for, let me just double check, for the duration, which is 1 minute. All right, they're charmed and incapacitated and unaware of their surroundings. So 3 things to dive into there. Number 1, this doesn't work against creatures who are immune to charmed. Okay, but incapacitated is great if you can get this off at the start of combat. Why? They will get advantage on the saving throw, and the saving throw is a wisdom saving throw if you're already fighting them. But if it's like your first action, right, before combat starts, then you kind of like removed somebody off the field. If you twin spell, very costly, but you remove 2 people on the field, right? 2 incapacitated. Personally, I wouldn't use it for for combat, primarily for in combat, but it gives you options in case you want to. All right, and I don't know how would you as a DM interpret unaware of your surroundings. So it's a part of the descriptive text. Me personally, if I was DM, I'd consider that person, if it's incapacitated, helpless. If you're not aware of your surroundings, you could be not just incapacitated, you could be unconscious. I don't know. How would you interpret that?
I wouldn't necessarily unconscious, since that's actually like a different condition type. But I mean, I wouldn't say like let's say you cast modified memory on somebody, and then somebody else in the party casts, I don't know, like wall of fire, for example, right? If they're unaware of their surroundings, they're not cognizant enough to even get out of the wall of fire. They're just gonna, right? Like,
Yeah.
they're just gonna lay there, or whatever, right? Like whatever other effect is going on, they're not gonna have the presence of mind to move. They're just in their own little, out of its own little world. Yeah. So, you can do pretty much anything, and it's not going to matter. They're not going to defend themselves. They're not going to be trying to move. They're not going to be concerned about, trying to escape grapples or anything else you do to them. They're just there. They're basically unconscious. They just don't have the unconscious condition, In fact, it's even worse. It's even worse than unconscious, because they're not going to wake up and get out,
Okay, that would be a fun ruling. Okay, however, unfortunately, due to Raw, okay, if they take damage, the spell ends.
Oh, that's right. I forgot.
The memory.
I forgot about that.
But it's fine. It's fine. But
I was thinking of the condition in general. I forgot that specifically modified memory does state that if they take damage, it breaks. In fact, a lot of charmed conditions do, to be fair. So, yeah.
Yeah. So it's a niche pick. I'm gonna say it's not a great spell, right? But it's niche. You could use it for roleplay. If you don't have anything that you wanted to pick at 5th level, I think this would be a good pick. Aside from Synaptic Static, it gives you an option for in combat and outside of combat. The only thing I'd caution with using this is not to abuse it, because a lot of the spell is DM fiat. Just like I asked you the question, it even states at the end that the DM can rule that whatever memory you implanted is too nonsensical to affect the creature. They're kind of like going to ignore the memory like a dream.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the only thing I don't like about the spell. It's still up to DM fiat. All right. So
what about telepathic bond, which is the other one that we get automatically on the spell list? What are your thoughts on it? Or is that one that you would definitely trade out for Synaptic Static or whatever?
Yeah,
else?
I traded out. I picked Telekinesis and Synaptic Static. I think for Telepathic Bond, we already mentioned earlier that we already have first level ability, which is not as good, but it's free.
Yes.
So I'm not really going to need that. And it serves our purpose.
That's my thought too.
Suggestions. You can do a suggestion using the first level ability.
And look, I'm not saying that there'll never be a time for it, but at least in my experience, all the tables I've played with, and I mean like over the years, not just my current table, all the players act like we have telepathic bond, and we're all discussing strategy, and everybody's like, "Oh, I'm going to do this." Okay, well, yeah, exactly. So, I'm not saying there'll never be a time. Maybe you're fighting an army, and you need to be able to X-Men, telepathically communicate everybody together, in different parts of the battlefield, and the DM is like, "Okay, well, this fight, you guys are actually separated, so you need to be able to." I'm not saying it'll never come up, but that's such a niche situation that it's really hard to justify. Like a niche first or second level spell can be fine. It's not a big commitment. A niche 5th level spell like that's not so great.
Right. I think you could pick it if you're not planning to take Telekinesis.
Yeah.
Because you could just take Synaptic Static and then this, right? If you don't like Modified Memory as well, you pick Rari's Telepathic One. I was thinking as well, though, that by this time, perhaps somebody in the party has Ritual Caster, or maybe you have Ritual Caster, and you just pick up Rari's Telepathic Bond as a ritual.
Mm-hmm.
That's another option. You don't really have to pick it as a spell. But, again, your options are open. What's great about Aberrant Mind, and also the Clockwork Soul, is that they give you a bunch of free spells that it makes the Sorcerer feel more versatile, let's say, than the prepared spellcasters. The prepared spellcasters, they have access pretty much to the full spell list, but they can only prepare a certain number of spells. If you actually try to count, let's say the number of prepared spells, like a certain cleric or a certain wizard can have a certain level, compared to the spells known of an Aberrant Mind or a Clockwork Soul at the similar level, combining their subclass known spells plus their known spells for sorcerer.
Yeah.
They actually have more spells.
Yeah. The only time they really start to fall off is at extreme high levels, because once you start hitting 13, sorcerers start getting a new spell every other level, whereas wizards are getting wizards are getting 2 per level pretty much the whole way through. They're getting scrolls, they can inscribe to their spell book. But like you said, like a lot of campaigns don't go to those levels anyway. And, even if the wizard has like 8 different 9th level spells, they still only have one 9th level spell slot. Right? So
Exactly.
it doesn't matter if they have every single spell on the entire 9th level spell list. It's like any sorcerer has 1 or maybe 2. It doesn't really matter because you're only casting
the same thing.
And you're all casting wish anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Exactly. And when you get back to even to lower level spells, the wizard could have every spell in the spell book. He only has a certain number of spell slots. When he runs out, he can't cast the other ones.
Exactly.
The sorcerer can not just know more than what the wizard knows at that level, but they can also cast that spell repeatedly because of Font of Magic. Right. The opportunity cost, of course, is you might have to trade out some sorcery points or some lower level spell slots.
Well, the other good thing about Aberrant Mind and Clockwork Soul as well is that the sorcerer spell list is really good, but it's not as good as the wizard one. But you do start to overcome some of those disadvantages because you get like we talked about summon aberration, but Clockwork Soul gets summon construct. So you can start to get some of those other niche type of spells that like wizards really excel at, and sorcerers just not that they don't excel at it. They have like no options in those type of fields, right? Well, suddenly now you do, right? So is it going to be as good? Maybe not, but you can extend the spell on your Clockwork Soul sorcerer, use that with summon construct, just like the Aberrant Mind could with summon aberration, and you're starting to, at least
bridge the gap.
At least get into that, just bridge the gap a little bit, right? And I just think that it opens up so many different options for how you want to play a sorcerer. I think sometimes sorcerers get limited, not in a practical sense, but people in players' minds, we limit sorcerer like, oh yeah, but you're just going to do this, or you're just going to do that, because you don't have the spell. You don't have as many spells as the wizard. The wizard is going to have, it's going to have all the utility spells, it's going to have all this, it's going to have the... And it's like, yeah, wizards are, and they're going to have virtual casting. I'm not trying to say that. I'm just saying that, you start to bridge that gap a lot better, where you can be like, okay, well, I'm not going to be as good of a summoner as a wizard, but at least I can summon something. I'm not going to have as many utility spells as a wizard, but I'm going to have a couple good ones. But I'm also going to have meta magic. So the stuff I'm really good at, I'm better at it than the wizard. And the stuff I'm not as good at, that's fine too, right? Like, if I wanted to be a wizard, I would have been a wizard, But, it's like, you're not just only this thing now. You could be like, yeah, okay, I'm way up here for the stuff that I'm great at. And I'm still okay at the other stuff. It's not like I have nothing, right? And I think that that's where these 2 subclasses in particular, and even Divine Soul a bit. I mean, Divine Soul, you kind of having to split your spell slots between your sorcerer spell list and the cleric spell list. But it does allow you to branch into, if you're like, what, I want Revivify. Why not? Suddenly you Divine Soul, you can add that to your spell list.
Exactly.
I want Spirit Guardians for whatever reason, right? Or Spiritual Weapon. A Spiritual Weapon is a good example. No concentration. It's a bonus action. You're like, okay, I'm going to be...
Easy to fit in.
Yeah, I'm just going to be doing this, and then on the top side, I'm going to have some Spiritual Weapon damage, right? So, it really starts to give you a lot of those other options, where some of the sorcerer subclasses are more limited and have those less. These ones, you're like, I'm still going to be great at the things sorcerers are great at, and I'm going to be passable in some of these other areas where traditionally sorcerers have had no options, which I find nice.
Right, agreed. And I think, to be honest, when it comes to actual combat, it's better to be best at your role.
Yeah.
Right? I think sorcerers cast spells better. Wizards just have more options, more spells. But you still have 1 action per round. You still have 1 bonus action. It doesn't change that fact.
Yeah.
But sorcerers can cast more spells. Sorcerers can cast modified by meta magic. And of course, they can also, let's say, combo it, with other actions which wizards can't. Because wizards can spend their action on casting a spell. Sorcerers can, let's say, spend their action on telekinesis and then cast a spell. It's a quicken. So those kinds of things wizards can't do. So I think in a party wherein there's multiple people who can fill in different roles, being better at what you do instead of being versatile is, more impactful.
Yes.
Because whatever you can't do that you're just or maybe not can't, but you're just average at or above average, another person in a party can handle that better.
Yeah.
And then maybe what you can do is what they can't do. Let's say a healer, let's say a bard or cleric, right? They're handling the healing. Okay, you're handling the control.
Yeah.
And then you're both best at it. Unlike, let's say, if you put in a wizard, I'll partner them with a bard. At the earlier levels, to be honest, I think the sorcerer is better than the wizard. There is nothing from level 8 downwards that I would pick from the sorcerer from the wizard spell list that's not on the sorcerer spell list.
Find
It
familiar,
really
maybe.
becomes you could get as a ritual.
That's,
you could get as a magic initiative.
that's true. That's true. But I mean, you said on the spell list, so I was assuming no,
Right, but
no
yeah.
feats and stuff. But there's always going to be a few exceptions. But overall, I agree with your point. Yeah.
Yeah, overall, I think there's the only power spells start to creep in at level 9, basically 5th level spells wizard. Foremost example is Wall of Force.
Yeah.
So, and if we factor in the Clockwork Sorcerer who gets access to Wall of Force, then I'm beginning to think, okay, then I'm gonna declare that the Sorcerer is the better caster in the game, or the best caster in the game, until the Wizard reaches 11th level. But which by then most campaigns would be.
Yeah.
Over. So for the big part of the game, the Sorcerer is actually, I think, in my opinion, the best class in the game, the best caster in the game.
Yeah. The one problem, again, that sorcerers start to have at higher levels, like you indicated, is that some of the really, really great wizard spells don't show up. Right? You don't have Force Cage, you don't have Simulacrum, you don't have Maze. Some of these other contingency. Oh yeah, I did a video specifically just on contingency. Right. Yeah. So you don't have some of those really, really great options. But like you said, a lot of campaigns never go that high anyway, so it just really doesn't matter. Anyway, we should probably end things. We've been talking for like 2 hours. So
with some technical difficulties. Apologies. Yeah.
Oh, those are on my end. Anyways, I'll probably split the video into 2 parts. I'll probably do part 1 when the video cancels out the first time. That'll be a good length break. And then I'll probably do a part 2. And, because 2 hours is going to be a lot for some people to watch. But either way, I'll have the videos up on the channel shortly, probably in the next...
Looking forward to it.
In the next 48 hours, hopefully I'll have both parts up. I'll have to do some editing, of course, and stuff. But yeah, it's been really good to talk to you. I know you already are aware of this, but for the audience, yesterday we decided to do a test call just to make sure everything was going to be okay. And our test call lasted 4 hours because I thought it was actually 3, and then when I hung up, I saw it was 4 because we just started talking, just having fun, getting to know each other, talk about a variety of different things. And it's like, that was okay, well, tomorrow we're going to have to focus down. We'll keep things a little more streamlined. So we're going to shave that 4-hour conversation to only 2 hours, I've been ready to do a video once, and it was like an hour and 30 minutes. And I was like, okay, this is way too long. So I redid it, and then the redid one was like an hour and 10 or an hour and 15. And I was like, okay, well, that's not much better.
We could just split it into parts so it's more digestible for the audience.
I think so too.
If they enjoy the conversation, they enjoy the insights that we've been sharing, I think we could come up with more content on sorcerers. We could come up with more discussions. Let us know the topics that that you guys would like for us to discuss.
Yeah, and it's not like you only know sorcerer, so we can talk about other classes.
Right.
But anyways, thanks for being on my channel and for setting some time aside to talk to me. I know that you're in the Philippines, so it's probably pretty late there. It's 11:09 my time. It's probably 1 in the morning.
1 a.m.
Yeah. So thank you for staying up and being here, and hopefully people will find some good stuff in this conversation. Like I said, I kind of wanted to talk Aberrant Mind because that's what I've been playing lately, and why not? Selfishly, I have a channel. I can talk about whatever I want, But I figured,
of course.
Yeah. But I think that there's also stuff that probably applies. That's why I wanted to talk about other ideas, not just my own specific build, because it's like maybe not everybody wants to play that kind of build, right? And I like to give people options. Like even in my build videos, I'm not saying this to criticize any other creator, but I find a lot of other channels, they'll be like, level 1 do this, level 2, level 3, level 4, level 5. Whereas most of mine are like, this is what I want to do, this is how I want to do it. If I'm multi-classing, I'm probably going to do it here or here. But I don't really go like level by level by level by level, because to me, I want you to have fun playing the character yourself and kind of
exactly
fool around with stuff. And to me, like, let's say let's say I decide to, since we're talking sorcerer and warlock and a lot of this video, let's say I want a multi-class, right? I would be like, okay, I'm going to start sorcerer because I want the constitution saving throw proficiency. But maybe I will multi-class immediately after that into warlock. Maybe I go to level 3 and then I multi-class. Maybe I go to 5 because I want 30 little spells and then I multi-class. Like, the point is that at some point, whatever I'm trying to add, does it have to be done right at level 2? Maybe, but maybe not, you know? Like, there's always other ways to do things. So I look to give people suggestions on, like, this is what I'm trying to achieve, this is how I'm trying to do it. But the actual, like, level by level specific breakdown might not be as important as just the overall idea that we're trying to accomplish, you know?
You could just discuss the concept, like what are the key spells?
Yeah, exactly.
What are the key tactics, like how you want to do the round by round, you know, what you're typically doing in the first round, second round. Let's be honest, most combats last like 2 or 3 rounds anyway.
Yeah, maybe 4.
What are your key spells, key tactics, and then perhaps just minor suggestions on the feats, perhaps that you think are critical to the build. Maybe Sentinel's a key feat, right? Or maybe Alert's a key feat that you wanted to highlight. And then maybe certain races you may want to highlight. Okay, I really like Harangon because of the initiative bonus of the Harangons, right? So maybe we'll highlight those. Again, the opportunity for the player.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's kind of, like, even if you, I mean, you've watched a ton of my videos, even when I get to, like, feat suggestions, they're all just suggestions. Like, you know, I might talk about a specific build, it's like, I'm taking this, I'm taking this, I'm taking this, but what I'm suggesting to build other people is like, okay, maybe you want alert, maybe you want mobile, maybe you want this, that, whatever other things, and maybe I'll have someone like, okay, we're making an archery build, I consider sharpshooter to be mandatory.
You know, non-negotiable.
Yeah, you're right. But then I'll have other suggestions. It's like, okay, I like this, I like this, I like this, I like this. But you've got, you know, between like taking sharpshooter and taking all your dexterity ASIs, like you're not going to be able to fit everything you want, right? So it's like, okay, here's like 5 other or 6 other ones that I think are good. Pick the 2 or 3 that you're going to be able to fit. And I'll give why I think they're good. But I might also talk about like why I like A or B, but ultimately I like to leave it open for people to choose their own. And this is one of the reasons I like talking to people like you. I think a lot, I mentioned this yesterday in our test call, I think a lot of content creators are kind of afraid to have like their subscribers and commenters on the channel because it's kind of like saying like, oh, maybe I'm not the expert after all. Maybe, you know, I'm talking to my audience, but I should know more than them because I'm the guy with the channel. Whereas I'm just like, okay, other people play just as much D&D as me, or even more. Right? Other people have great suggestions. Other people have played a class where maybe I haven't. I have no problem bringing on other people. Like in the case like there's people like you who've been subscribed to my channel for a long time and you've listed multiple build videos, and when I look at the builds, I'm like, yeah, that's actually a great idea for a build. So, you know, I have no problem bringing someone like you on the channel because I'm not an expert on everything. I play a lot of D&D. I know what I'm talking about. But other people also do too. And that, you know, so, like I said, I find that a lot of other creators, they don't want to have people on, and maybe it's like an ego thing. Whereas for me, I'm just like, whatever, this guy talks about Sorcerer all the time. I kind of want to talk about Sorcerers with them. Why not? And if I find this conversation interesting, maybe the viewers will too, you know? So, you know, that's what I said, like, yesterday we were talking for 4 hours. Yeah, hopefully so.
Or insightful.
I know. I'm starting to ramble again now because I said we were going to finish, and that was like 5-6 minutes ago. But anyways, like I said, I just wanted to thank you for your time and for being on the channel, and I thought it was a great conversation. I enjoyed our conversation yesterday too. We kind of talked about a billion different topics. We said, I wish I would have recorded one yesterday because that could have been like 6 more videos, but whatever, it's fine.
On different topics.
Yeah, on different topics. But I think this was a really good conversation. Hopefully the audience enjoys it too. Like I said, I'm probably going to split it into at least 2 parts, maybe more, who knows, given how long it is. But 2 parts for sure, because we've got a natural break when the internet died, you know, perfectly in the middle of the conversation.
3rd level spells.
yeah, basically in the middle of our conversation, so that's a natural break point. But anyways, thanks for being on the channel, Rob, and I'm sure I'll talk to you more times in the future because, you know, either just privately or on the channel, whatever.
With you.
Yeah, I think it was a great conversation. So, thank you. People look for Rob's builds and tons of comment sections. A lot of my videos, especially when I'm talking about things like Sorcerer, you pretty much always give me suggestions and stuff there. And a lot of your builds are just really, really epic. I like that you have a different approach to the game than a lot of people, where you're like, you get people who are like, I'm just playing this, and then you ask them, they have like no insight really. It's just, I'm playing a fighter, and I just swing. And then other people who cut in the next level, whereas you're somebody who clearly thinks about the game a lot and very analytical and studies different ideas, and you think about not just the combat effectiveness, but also all the combat stuff. You think about the role play aspects. You think about pretty much every aspect of the game, which is one of the reasons I like a lot of your stuff. So
appreciate the compliment. So I hope the viewers enjoyed the video and they could like and share, subscribe, and support your channel.
Oh, thank you. I never got around to saying that. And most importantly, leave comments in the comment section, of course.
Leave comments in the comment section. All right.
Thanks for being on, Rob. Like I said, I'll talk to you in the future for sure again. So,
talk to you soon.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.